Hello, this is Archie Dunlop with Talking Astrology with Archie on Thursday, May the 18th, 2023. Today was another day when I felt somewhat uninspired and I didn't really know what I was going to talk about. Now, yesterday I found inspiration by looking at the Daily Mail website. That shows how desperate I was. Today, I had a go with the New York Post website, and I think I found something to talk about. So, let me show you. I found this perhaps rather disturbing article, which was titled "Wagner Mercenary Boss Posts grisly video that claims ex-army Green Beret killed fighting for Ukraine." So the story is about a former Green Beret by the name of Nicholas Maimer, who was apparently killed in Bakhmut in Ukraine. Apparently he was in Ukraine helping to train the Ukrainians, helping them to defend against the Russian invasion, and the Wagner group announced that they'd found his body, and they identified him as Nicholas Maimer, and he was he had been in the army for 20 years, and he was apparently a native of Idaho, and yes, he was dead. So we can get a bit more information here. There we go. The head of Russia's Wagner mercenary group displayed what he claimed to be the body and identification documents of a former US Army Green Beret who he said was killed fighting on the side of Ukraine in Bakhmut. Prigozhin shows what appears to be the slain soldier's US-issued ID card with his photo and reads aloud his name, Nicholas. And so, the Idaho connection. The Idaho Statesman reported Tuesday that the man in the video is 45-year-old Army Special Force veteran Nick Maimer, who had spent the past year in Ukraine training civilian volunteers. So, we go down. There he is, or that's what he looked like. And below that, we find his all-important driving license. And the driving license tells us what we want to know. It tells us his birthday, June the 4th, 1977. By the way, that's American format date. So the Americans, for some strange reason, put the month first. So yes, so he was born June the 4th, 1977. June the 4th, 1977. Makes him a Gemini. Interestingly, Yevgeny Prigozhin, head of Wagner, also is a Gemini, as I discussed in a previous video. So now we know a bit about him, we can look at his horoscope. And the question I'm asking in looking at his horoscope is, why did he do what he did? And actually another question I'm going to try to ask is, why did he die when he died, assuming he died? I mean, I think everyone is saying that he is dead. Well, not everyone, but it's a big news story at the moment. So we're going to now look at his chart. And so we can see that when I find it, that he's certainly a Gemini. There's his sun in Gemini, conjunct Jupiter. In fact, it's exactly conjunct Jupiter. That Sun-Jupiter conjunction, I'm not sure about that. It is a bit troublesome. I mean, Jupiter is in Gemini. He had Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter is not a good place for Gemini is not a good place for Jupiter. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, but in Gemini, it's in its detriment. You know, you know, Taurus is about, Jupiter is about the big vision. Gemini is about the small facts. So how can Jupiter really work very well in Gemini? And then it's conjunct the Sun. That urge to find new realities, to expand one's horizon, is kind of trapped by the Sun. So maybe in terms of Ukraine, Nicholas Maimer saw things in Ukraine that he didn't fully get. He was kind of, I won't say deceived. In fact, I might say deceived, because this Sun-Jupiter conjunction is opposition Neptune. Now, if you've got a Jupiter-Neptune opposition in your chart, it's very idealistic, but it can be idealistic in a quite self-deceptive way. We can put too much into our ideals. We can imagine things that really aren't possible. That he might have felt that it was an obvious situation in Ukraine. People fighting for their freedom, for democracy, or whatever. It might have seemed obvious to him, but he was just perhaps only seeing one small part of the picture, and he was maybe getting involved in something he didn't fully understand. And maybe the ideals that he thought he was fighting for, well, I don't know whether he was actually fighting in Ukraine. He certainly was training soldiers. But these ideals he thought were so important may not have been quite as real as he thought they were. Is Ukraine really a wonderful democracy worth fighting for? I thought Ukraine was the most corrupt country in Europe, even more corrupt than Russia. Now, this Sun-Jupiter conjunction is exactly 45 degrees from a Venus-Mars conjunction. Now, he's got Mars in Aries. Now, Mars in Aries is the archetypal soldier. Mars rules Aries. It's very impulsive. If it sees something, it wants to act. Aries is a very generous and spontaneous sign, and so I think maybe that explains what he was doing in Ukraine. Maybe he felt he was doing something really great, and it's conjunct Venus. So Venus is kind of overwhelmed by being so close to Mars. Venus doesn't work very well in Aries, particularly when it's conjunct Mars. So what's happening is that the Jupiter is 45 degrees from his Mars. So Jupiter expands what it touches. It expands everything it aspects. So there's a huge amount of energy there. He does seem to be a very high energy person. So it's perhaps not surprising that he did so well in the special forces. But there may have been a sense in which he didn't know when to stop. And, again, you've got Mars, 45-degree aspect from the Sun. That is accident prone. So if you're accident prone, yes, you might be attracted to the army, but Bakhmut is not really the place to go if you're accident prone. I think that, what we're hearing in the news is that it was an artillery strike that killed him, although it's a bit confusing whether he was killed in an artillery strike or whether he was shot or whatever. But it is an exciting chart, but a very dangerous chart. So what about his death? I don't know exactly what his date of death was. I mean, I'm assuming it happened a few days ago. And on April the 20th, there was a new moon eclipse. And this new moon eclipse was at 29 degrees Aries. So in other words, he had a new moon eclipse exactly on his Mars. So we would expect something to do with Mars when that eclipse hit home. Now, you might think that this is a new opportunity to do stuff in Ukraine, new opportunity to do stuff with weaponry and with training and whatever he wants to do in Ukraine. But new moon eclipses can be difficult, and it seems in this case the new moon eclipse was a signal that it was over, that his death was imminent. So in a way, it was it was time for him to accept that his life had run its course. And I should say that there's his south node. He has a south node in Aries, fairly close to Mars. Now, in astrology, the south node is where we should be moving away from. The south node is connected with perhaps past incarnations, past experiences. It's what we find easy. So being the action man, being the soldier, is what he finds easy, or what he found easy. Maybe he'd been a soldier in his previous incarnation. Maybe he was the universal soldier. Well, not forever. At some stage, the universal soldier has to accept that it's time to turn those swords into plowshares. But no, he didn't stop. The North Node was Libra. The North Node was about having a more conciliatory, quieter life, but he couldn't do that. He didn't have a chance to do that. He lived, I think, in his South Node, and there came a point where he'd taken it too far, and that's perhaps why he died when he died. Now, there's another thing about his death which is kind of interesting. Now, in astrology, we're taught that Jupiter is a fortunate planet, that Jupiter transits bring good fortune. This isn't true, actually. Jupiter transits can be connected with death. Jupiter trines something that might be an easy death. And in his case, I'm assuming he died over the last few days. I'm not, I don't know for sure. But he died when, as far as I can see, when Jupiter was conjunct his Mars, and I think conjunct his Venus. And so he is a really good example of how a Jupiter transit led to his death. So if you're doing people's charts and you're playing around with Jupiter transits, always be careful, because you could get it completely wrong. It's so tempting to tell people that everything is wonderful. Jupiter's going to bring good luck. If you'd seen Jupiter on someone's Venus and Mars, you could say, well, you're going to be very energetic, you're going to find new love, you're going to be lucky. No, you would have completely got it wrong. Jupiter, in certain situations, can kill you. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say on Nicholas Maimer. He looks to me to be a very interesting person, a very interesting chart, and I'm sorry that he ended up in Ukraine. I don't think it was the right thing for him to do. Now, as far as today's planets are concerned, today's positions of the planets for today, May the 18th, 2023. The moon continues to be in Taurus, where it makes a conjunction with Uranus. So it's a day when many of us are going to be quite stubborn. There are things we want to do. There are states of mind and states of emotion that we are attracted to. And we're not going to want to change. If we're feeling miserable, we're going to want to stay miserable. If we're feeling happy, we're going to want to stay happy. If we're feeling angry, we're going to want to stay angry. And particularly with Moon conjunct Uranus, there's something a little explosive in the air. Our stubbornness or other people's stubbornness could lead to an explosion. At the same time, the Sun is conjunct the Mars-Neptune midpoint. Now, the Mars-Neptune midpoint is often about sleaze. It's about things that are not very savoury, but which are nonetheless attractive. So we might be attracted to criminality. We might be attracted to, alcohol, drugs, all that kind of stuff with Sun on the Mars-Neptune midpoint. But it's not good. We've got to be aware of the temptation. We've got to be aware of how we ourselves can lead to our own undoing. So when we start moving in the wrong direction, we need to be very tough. We need to say, no, we're not going to do it. So, with Sun on the Mars-Neptune midpoint, stay out of trouble. And if you're attracted to sleaze, think again, because it's not going to do you any good. Now, as far as the 12 signs are concerned, here we go. Aries. You're having another look at your finances and some things have changed. Act accordingly. Taurus, you can be an agent of change and in the process you need to shake things up. That's because there's that Moon conjunct Uranus in Taurus. Gemini, now it makes sense. But just because you understand something doesn't mean that you should talk about it. Cancer, what do you want? Perhaps what you want today isn't what you wanted yesterday. Leo, at work there are some disturbances. They can work to your advantage. The dark underside to life needs to be avoided, and that is because the Sun, ruler of Leo, is conjunct the Mars-Neptune midpoint. Virgo, it can be a day of revelation, but can you handle the consequences? Libra, a good day for discovering things. You can find sleaze in the cleanest of places. Scorpio, if you meet someone for the first time, don't trust them. Sagittarius, the details are surprising, and as a result, you might have to change your plans. Capricorn, don't make assumptions about other people. Character analysis is just guesswork. Aquarius, you're feeling tense, probably because you're not in the right place. And finally, Pisces, you have to do something that you weren't expecting. What it is, whatever it is, do it properly. So that's astrology for today, and I'm now going to finish with my I Ching reading, with my question being, what is Thursday going to be like for visitors to my YouTube channel? So, the day I don't think is going to start very well, because the first hexagram is hexagram number 39, obstruction. So if we try to make things happen, we're just going to get stuck. It's just things are not going to move. Perhaps we're going to try and persuade people to do things and they're just not going to cooperate. Perhaps we're going to make a phone call and ask whether we can have a meeting or arrange something. It's just not going to happen. So our first attempts to make things happen are unlikely to be successful. And so in the first instance, it's going to be a good idea to retreat. We try, but we mustn't keep on trying. We must pull back and review the situation. But that doesn't mean to say we need to give up on it, because we may actually have a responsibility to deal with this obstruction. It may be down to us. So recognize that responsibility, and once you've collected your thoughts, go into the world again, see what you can do to create the changes that are required. And I think it could be quite a long process. We're not just talking about today, and that's suggested by the fact that this hexagram of obstruction moves to the hexagram contemplation. Contemplation is about thinking things through. So we have the ability to deal with the obstruction, but we need to spend time thinking about it, working out what our strengths are, perhaps trying to talk to other people if they'll listen to us, and work out the best way forward. So a time of contemplation, but we mustn't contemplate for too long. At a certain stage, we'll have to live up to our responsibility and deal with the obstruction. So that's all I'm going to say for today, and I will talk to you tomorrow.